today's guest is a former SWAT team negotiator, uh, executive protection specialist, celebrity and Hollywood protection specialist, and now a police officer, I believe. Ryan
Yep.
Lee, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jeff. I hope it's
Yeah, man.
interesting.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Yeah. So for the audience out there, Ryan and I used to work together. We allowed to say this? We worked on a show called House of Cards.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
factual.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Everyone knows that.
Yep. It's on my LinkedIn, so you
Yeah.
can't, no denying it.
Yeah. So Ryan pretty much ran the security on House of Cards. And before that, you were a SWAT team negotiator.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
so I don't know, where should we start, man? I mean, we've had so many adventures. I don't know if we should talk about SWAT team stuff or about like crashing a boat together or
Yeah, so you're the expert on what your audience is going to find interesting. You may edit this out later, but just because uh, the myriad of jobs you just described that I had, let me give you a really quick synopsis of how I did all that, like the arc of my jobs, because
please.
I used to tell people all the time, like I have the most unorthodox change in careers. So I was working for the Long Beach Police Department in 2004 to 2012, and 2000 and somewhere in the middle of that, I got chosen to be a negotiator for the SWAT team. So, and we'll talk about that stuff. So while I was doing that and I was a police officer, I was also doing security on the side, just like press junkets and red carpet stuff. And my department didn't have any overtime. So it was just like a sergeant of mine said, hey, do you want to stand around at an after party and wear a suit? Sure. So I started doing that. And as I started doing that, I started getting some clients and getting some experience in the industry. And then I got an opportunity to start my own company, which sounds really exotic, but it was just you take a state test and have license. And so I made the decision to resign from the Long Beach Police Department as a full-time police officer and become a reserve. So I was a full-time reserve officer while I was running my security company for 5 or 6 years. And then I decided that Hollywood was devouring me and decided to go back to the police department. So now I work for the Anaheim Police Department. So it went full-time police officer, security company in reserve, and then Anaheim. There you go.
Gotcha. Got you.
I don't know if that's necessary, but
But you were on the SWAT team prior to
yeah.
your security company.
Yes. So I was a negotiator with Long Beach Police for 6 years or 7 years, I think. Yeah.
What kind of education does that entail? How much like psychology books are you reading? Or is it all just self-motivated and they're like, "You're the negotiator now. You're pretty cool."
Right. It's yeah. Sadly, more of the second thing than the first thing. So it depends. I mean, we call ourselves the hostage negotiator team, and a lot of teams started to call themselves crisis negotiators because you're dealing with barricades, you're dealing with suicidal subjects, and I think the amount of time somebody actually had a hostage in a negotiation that I was a part of is like less than 10 over the 6 years. So very rarely is it like, hey, it's a bank robbery, and because the FBI would come in and take that. But so really what you need is you need to display some of the skill sets that they can build on. And one of them is an ability to listen. The layperson way of describing it is like, oh, that guy has the gift of gab. Like I can, if you draw two circles on the wall that look like eyes, I can talk to it for 4 hours. I don't think that's a compliment, but I've heard people say that. So you need to be somebody who is very comfortable in conversation and coming up with questions. And really a lot of that is listening and not letting there be periods where you're asking the same question again and again. So there's a
Is
little bit
is
of,
that is that why we always got along so well? We're just
yes,
great. We're great listeners. We just like to
yes,
listen to each other.
yeah, yeah, that is exactly why you and I get along is because like, and I think it's good for the audience to know, like we talked for 2 hours before we started recording this podcast because with no agenda whatsoever. It's just, oh, do you remember this time? And what do you think is going to happen with this? And don't you think that's weird that people do that? And I think that you have to be genuinely curious. I think it's a skill that if you don't have as a police officer, it holds you back. You have to be genuinely curious to solve issues or to find a solution. So if you don't have that curiosity, then you run out of questions because you're just not interested. You just don't care. So when I got picked up for the team, there was a tryout. They make you go through scenarios where you talk to role players. One's a suicidal subject, one's actually like a liquor store robbery type of a thing, and one is a depressed person. So you go through these things and kind of see where your skill set is. And then once you get out of it, there's a lot of learning about mental health, learning about people in crisis, why people do what they do. I went to FBI negotiator school. It was 2 weeks long. It was really, really interesting. You see the people who do it like for prison riots and like these really
Did you study
things.
with Chris Voss?
I did not.
Oh, okay.
I did not, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah, it's funny. Like one of the ways that part of our training, my sergeant had us go to a suicide hotline and work a suicide hotline.
Mm.
So that was really eye-opening because there are real consequences. It's a real person, but people are calling up and you just have to ask them questions. You have to show them that you're engaged in what they're doing and that you're building on those things. So there's all these like skill sets like active listening and minimal qualifiers and emotional labeling. So,
Now, I've always wondered about this. Active listening is actually like very quiet listening, right? Don't you not respond much when you active listen, or is that wrong?
So that's wrong. So active listening. So all of the things that fall under active listening are things that show the person that you are paying attention.
Okay.
So one of the things will be like minimal encouragers. This is funny that this sounds like something that is a skill that you have to develop. A minimal encourager is like, I see. Those are all minimal encouragers. Because if I'm sitting here like this while you talk, you're like, are you getting any of this? Like, are you hearing any of this? So there's those things. There's repeating back when people say, I was just so angry with my dad. Oh, so you and your dad didn't get along. Or I didn't really ask a question. I just repeated something that you said. Or emotional labeling. You say, my wife's a bitch, and I go, wow, you sound angry. I'm not angry. I'm sad about that. I wish she wasn't so mean. Oh, okay. So we try to get why you feel the way you do, because once you develop that rapport, and that's what a lot of negotiating is develop rapport so that I can manipulate whatever my game plan is, get information from you, move you to a different room, get you to come out, whatever those things are. So you build the rapport so you know the best way to manipulate sales tactic.
How many negotiations would you say you've done in your career?
I was really lucky when I got on the team. When I first got on the team, there were amazing people on the Long Beach team. We had a couple of people that had been doing it for a long time. One guy was really good. His name was Chris Costa, and he'd been with the department for a long time, and he was kind of the senior guy on the team. But a lot of the people on the team were not super anxious to get on the phone. It wasn't a position people fought for. And for whatever reason, like I felt really confident that I would be good at it. So I kept asking, can I be the person on the phone? So, I mean, I would say that I've gone to, in the 6 years I was on the team, we did, I'm going to say conservatively, 250 call outs. So you get called out, you don't talk on every one of those, but you prepare to talk on every one of those because there's somebody who's either barricaded. So you're trying to find a phone number for them, you're trying to get a phone into them, you're trying to figure out how to communicate. But I mean, I would say I've easily been involved in 50 of the 250 calls. At least 50 times I've been the person communicating with that person.
And do most of those have a hostage involved?
Most of them don't. So most of them are a jumper on a freeway, side of a building. Somebody commits a robbery and then runs into their apartment or runs into somebody else's apartment. So that's of the situations that I guess could be deemed a hostage. Was there were innocent people inside of a barricaded situation that didn't feel like they could leave, but not so serious as like a bank, like all the people are handcuffed or zip tied and they're like, I'm going to start killing hostages. Like I had one that was he was like 18 or 19. He did a robbery. The police chased him into his apartment. He slammed the door. They set up a containment around the apartment, and we find out that his little sister is in there. So trying to get communication, like I don't know that he's going to hurt his little sister, but I don't know how desperate he is. So my job is now to communicate with him to say, let your sister go so we can figure this out. So I don't want her involved with this. Um, in that particular situation, he did not want his little sister to go because I think he knew if the little sister was inside, we probably weren't going to throw flashbangs and gas inside the apartment, which is true. So, so it was, but very few times was it like, hey, I'm not going to let this person go. I've had a few of those that were very tense, where there were actual hostages, like I'm not letting these people go, but most part it's people in crisis.
Did you get to flashbang a lot of people?
I did not. So there's a very strict distinction in law enforcement when you go, were you on the SWAT team? So the SWAT team is like the negotiators are a part of the SWAT team. Like when there's a SWAT call out, we go. But when you say you're on the SWAT team, you're almost always talking about the operators, the people that make entry, the sniper unit, all those things. So the negotiation unit is at Long Beach was integrated with the entry team, but the SWAT team was them. So no, I never got to throw a flashbang. It did
Never.
look fun. Never.
Oh, but it
Never.
did look fun though.
I got to throw a big phone through a window several times,
You
but
threw a
it doesn't.
phone through a window.
Yeah, we've got a throw phone. It looks
Oh,
like
you got to throw the phone to him so he can talk to you.
right. So keep in mind that when I first started doing this, it was 2005 or 2006. So cell phones existed, but not everybody had them. So you'd get a landline, you try to call them on the landline. But the reason that we wanted to throw our phone in was because nobody could interrupt that phone call. Because there was like literally, it was like a big, like a toolbox, and there was a phone on the top that would ring and you'd pick it up, but the box had cameras on it. So we wanted to throw that in, and then as technology upgraded, we had a robot that would like carry it in and drop it. But
So
that never worked.
these days though, with cell phones, criminals, they don't mind you having their number. They'll just chat you on their iPhone. It's cool.
Right. You're right. I do know I've talked to, because I'm not a negotiator with my current department, but I do know that they have to like they'll have conversations on Facebook Messenger with people in a barricade situation. Like it started with text, and then it was like, hey, their person's live streaming on Instagram, so they're like commenting on the Instagram feed, like, hey, this is the police, talk to me. So trying to like communicate with people on their level, depending on who that person is, it is pretty interesting the way technology changes law enforcement and how we do our jobs.
Now you got a guy on the other end. He's like the SWAT negotiators like, hang on, I'm just my earbuds. Can you hear me? Hang on, I gotta get my Bluetooth to connect. Hang on a second. Hang on. Bear with. Bear with.
It is. It's like you got to text the guy like, hey, add me on TikTok. I'm gonna send you a video so you can respond to it. So then
Let's negotiate through interpretive TikTok dances.
yeah, I'm gonna do the Eminem dance, and then you're gonna do the Machine Gun Kelly one, and then like, all right, you got me. I'm coming out.
All right, I'm coming out. You won this one.
This guy can really relate to me. He's really relating to the kids. Yeah.
I guess when you were
Changed a
on the
lot.
team, I just thought of this. When you were on the team or working with the team, that would have been pre-swatting. Have you heard of this swatting?
Yeah. Yeah. So you're right. That was. It's interesting because you look at something like swatting, which is where people will call in, call 911 with some dramatic, like, hey, I just murdered my parents. Come and get me. I'm at 123 Main Street. Well, 123 Main Street is the address of some kid that they don't like, because they know our response is going to have to be to set up a containment. So it's not that hard to do. I'm surprised it doesn't happen more often. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah,
so
well, I
easy.
saw a documentary where there was a guy who was just constantly swatting people,
Hmm.
and he
I watched that.
I think he went to prison, didn't he?
Hmm.
And
He
he
ended
had a
up.
really rough life where he was like living with grandma, and then grandma kicked him out, and then he couldn't get a
Yeah.
job because his brain was all fried and from
Yeah.
too much TikTok. And I'm really
You,
showing my
you
age here.
TikTok fries your brain, of course. I so I did see that. I think I saw the one you're talking about. my takeaway from that video from that documentary when I was watching it was this guy kept bragging that he was so good at swatting. It is not challenging to do swatting. It's not challenging. If the dispatcher is good and the dispatcher sees the number you're calling from and recognizes it as a number that's done this before, that's called 911 before, like the technology they have at dispatch is pretty next level. Like they've integrated all of these things. I was talking to one of our dispatchers the other day, and they were saying that because nobody calls from a landline, everybody calls 911 on a cell phone, but they'll have people that are like, hey, I was in a car accident, but I don't know where I am. And the dispatcher will say, okay, I have your number. I'm going to text you a link, click on it, and it's going to send me your address. It's going to give me your exact address. Wow. So there's all this technology that they have. So it's harder and harder to lie about that kind of stuff, but really, because we have to err on the side of caution, if you call up so we had a swatting incident. It was actually pretty clever. It was when I was working at Anaheim for the Anaheim Police Department, and somebody called in and said, hey, I live at whatever it is, 456 Pine Avenue. And I'm looking at the liquor store across the street from me, and some guy just came out and fired a gun in the air and then grabbed a woman and dragged her back in and shut the door. And the dispatcher's like, what did he look like? And he gave a description, what the female looked like, what the gun looked like. Okay. So we put up a perimeter around this liquor store in this kind of not good area. And the SWAT team shows up. We've got armor, blocking the door. We've got armor in the back. You got snipers on high ground. And we eventually make notifications in. There's no notifications. So they end up prying the door off of this location, like serving a search warrant, dynamic entry. And it was what we call a slap house, which is like an illegal gambling area. Like there's like all these like Vegas type games, and they sell drugs there and all kinds of nonsense. They pop up all over the place. But
what do you call that?
We go in, it's called a slap house. And the reason they call it a slap house is because one of the games we always find there is this like, it looks like one of those Miss Pac-Man games where like the game is the tabletop. Yeah. And you gamble, and then as certain characters go across, it looks like a big aquarium, and you slap it, and if you hit it, you get points. So it's like these people playing, looking for like, oh, that's worth 15. It's like Pokemon Go kind of, but it's all on the table in front of you. So they're slapping the table like idiots.
I think they have like an iPad game for cats that's like that.
Yes. I sadly have that app. I tried it. It's
you a cat owner now? You got a cat now?
Let's not talk about that. But yeah, yeah. I'm not proud. No, yes. I don't want to totally derail what we're talking about, but
so the slap house.
Right. Thank you. Bail me out here, Jeff. Bring me back to something cool. So the SWAT team goes in, they serve, we help them serve it, and it's a slap house. So they're like, okay, well, this is an illegal gambling house, clearly. So they end up taking all the games and, taking them as evidence and boarding up the location. And then we get a similar call like 2 weeks later, but for a different address. But this time, one of our vice sergeants goes, wait a minute, that's a slap house. And they're like, wait a minute, this is the same number that called about the other one. So what they think is the person that was doing the swatting has their own slap house, and he's taken out his competition.
Oh.
Because if he does the swatting, we have to go in and make sure there's nobody in need of medical attention in there. There's nobody really shot or kidnapped. And I'm like, that's really clever.
That's very clever. That guy could have created like the next AI, but instead he's swatting slap houses for competition's sake.
There are so many honestly, like the team that I'm on right now, I'm on a homeless outreach team. And some of the ingenuity you see, like the clever things that people do, we say all the time, like, man, if you just applied this to something legal, you could have like invented an app, or you could be on Shark Tank or something. like they're really clever people. Like that guy thought, look, I have a gambling house. I have my own slap house. How do I take out all these other ones? Well, instead of going, hey, there's a slap house at 123 Main Street, he goes, I can get the cops in there in 5 minutes. I'll say that I'll do swatting.
I wonder, did you say this already? Was he using the same story though? Was it gunshot in the air, grabbed a woman every time? Because you got to change your story,
Right. So he changed the story slightly. It was that somebody was, I think the second time it was somebody got stabbed, and then they got stabbed, but they went back in the place or something like that. the problem is you use the same phone number, which is so easy to not do. Like Google
Yeah.
numbers are
Yeah,
free.
you can get like I think it's like a VoIP number.
Yep.
There's apps, Google will give you a number. Google.
Yeah.
Do people use Hangouts anymore, or is that long
Yeah.
extinct?
Yeah. I think I think AI replaced that. But yeah, it really is like there are things that are not detrimental, but there's things that are so devastating and drain so many resources and are so dangerous that are not that hard to complete. You know what I mean? Like God help me for saying this, but like every time there's a school shooting, people go, I can't believe that happened. And unfortunately, I go, I can't believe it doesn't happen more often. The amount of mental illness out there, the amount of people that want to create a name for themselves, the amount of people that were, detached. It's not that hard. Like it's such a soft target, and it's scary that it only happens as infrequently as it does.
Yeah, there is a lot of mental illness around, and
Oh my goodness, yes.
yeah, pretty violent culture too, I would say.
Yeah, I remember talking to I was talking to let's drop his name, our friend Bo. Hopefully he
Yes,
watches this and has a comment. So I
he's
remember
definitely
many
a
years ago,
he's definitely a Can You Survive This podcast listener for sure.
and fantastic. And Bo, I love you. I'm glad that you I don't know how long we've been talking, but you finally came up in our podcast. One of the things we were talking about was how violent the world is, and he made a very astute, very Bo point of no, I mean, 500 years ago, in feudal times, when people are stabbing each other and everybody's going to war with arrows and sticks and catapults, like that was a more violent time. But it's I don't know if it's more violent, less violent, but we definitely, like, in my opinion, compared to like 20 years ago, there seems to be a lot less connection to humanity. Like
Yeah,
people seem to be okay being terrible to each other, and that's something that people talk about, like, oh, you as a police officer, you see all these terrible things. Like the thing that I have to see firsthand is human beings perpetrating like inhumane things against other humans. And you wonder, like, how did you get to that point? Because they're not even fighting a war. It's not for some holy purpose. It's, I just wanted to do something violent to somebody. And where does that come from?
I
So,
wonder if there's the disconnect from humanity because people are living so much through, the internet, social
oh
media,
yeah,
screens.
I
We used
totally
to
agree.
hang out
I
in
believe
person, damn it.
that's so I do, like, now we're getting into things that we're not experts in, but I will say that from my experience, when you talk about, I do have to go to a lot of mental health classes, and especially now I deal with the mentally ill almost every day. So you get an idea of like how prevalent it is, and this trauma informed responses, like why do people do the things that they do? When someone goes through trauma, what kind of effect does it have on their behavior in the future? And I absolutely think that the amount of time we spend in fake relationships or fake contact, which is what I think social media is. They're not real likes, they're not real friends. Like, you might have actual friends that follow you on social media, but I remember my goddaughter a long time ago was on social media and was like, I have 900 friends. And I'm like, no, you don't. There's no way that you have 900 friends. Like, you might have 6, and then you have 894 people that know who you are and follow you. So I do think that it separates us, and it makes it easier to do mean stuff to each other, I guess.
So let's get back to some negotiator stuff.
Yes.
Tell me, you said you never did any bank robberies, though.
No. Bank robberies it would
That's
be federal.
FBI.
The FBI. Yeah, the
That's
FBI would do it
FBI. Damn.
because that's their money. It's FDIC insured. So
Yeah. Yeah. You don't care about that money.
no.
So, okay. And most of your stuff was actually not with a hostage, but there was some with hostages, eh?
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
uh I'm saying a lot now these days. I've been hanging out with some
Good.
Canadian people, so just bear with me on that. But so tell me how
Sounds
many
classy.
times did you actually, have to save some hostages?
So I'm trying to think. I can think of I can think of 4 or 5 times where there were other people inside of the barricade that were not able to leave.
Mhm.
Um, and I think we talked about it really briefly a couple weeks ago, but we had one that was a legit hostage situation where somebody had his I can't remember if it was his ex-wife or just his daughter's mom. Somebody he was in a relationship with. He was angry at her and went to her parents' house and kidnapped them, tied them up, and started all kinds of atrocities against the two of them without killing them. Was, you know, committing sexual assault and physical assault and just really awful things. You know, not letting them use the bathroom and things like that. And I think that we were drawn to it because a neighbor called and said, "Hey, I can see through the kitchen window, and I think I can see my neighbor tied to a chair." And, you know, dispatchers get all kinds of people who are not mentally stable making calls of like, "Hey, there's somebody following me," or "Hey, there's a drone, you know, stealing my brainwaves," and stuff like that. But so you take it seriously and you go, "Okay, we'll see." And so I think the way it happened was a patrol unit went over there and looked in the window and was like, "Oh my gosh, there are two people in there." So,
and they were tied up or something, right?
They were tied up. Yeah. And I think if I remember correctly, I think they'd been tied up for like 2 or 3 days. It had been a while.
Ooh.
Yeah. He had not told the ex what he had done. He was trying to get her to come back. She was up north for some reason. He was trying to get her to come back. And, because she had the kid, bring the kid back. But I think he kept threatening her, like, "I'll do something to your parents." But he didn't say, "I have your parents," because she never called the police. So that's definitely high stakes. It's one of those situations that, you know, again, like when you're on a municipal police, Long Beach Police Department is a big department. I mean, the city's over 50 square miles. At the time, there was almost 1,000 police officers. So it's category 1 crime area, you know.
What is category 1? What is that?
So category 1 crime is where the easiest way to describe it is like Compton's category 1 crime area, like Mayberry is like category 5. So do you have homicides? Do you have major assaults? Do you have gang activity? Do you have those type of things? So Long Beach is, for the people who aren't familiar with California, Long Beach is the city south of Compton, and everybody kind of knows about Compton. It's very high crime area. There's some very nice areas of Long Beach, but there's a lot of gang activity. There's a lot of very serious crime that happens there. So, you know, there's more than a lot of cities. There's like 1 homicide every 2 years, and there's like, 30 or 40 homicides a year in Long Beach. I don't know, something like that.
And me and you used to work together in Baltimore, so there's that.
Category 1, yes, absolutely, and that's it's interesting too, because you go to these big cities that, like Baltimore, like we spent time together in Baltimore, in DC, in Miami. Like a lot of these areas are very, very serious crime. And it's, even with my experience coming from a city where there's a lot of crime, you see that, and even that is just like an exploded version of what I saw. So, but so the way it plays out is, once we figure out that we've got, a barricaded person, the guy's not barricaded yet because he hasn't refused to come out, but we know that he's planning on being there a while. I think that they put up a perimeter around the house without him knowing that we did that. We set up a command post like around the corner so that we could, get all of our assets and resources put together. The negotiating team is pretty much in charge of making contact when it's time to do that, but also gathering evidence. So we started and like talking to relatives. What do you know about this guy? Looking at his criminal history, like doing a workup is what we call it. We want to figure out as much as we can about this person to use in the eventual conversation. And then I think at one point they saw that he had a van registered to him. They found the van parked nearby. Like,
it's always got to have block. A van. It's always a fucking
right?
van.
This guy was a cliche top to bottom. Like, first of all, he had a van with no windows, so there's that. It did not say free candy on the side, but he had a van with no windows, and then inside he had rope, duct tape, a shovel, and lye. Like it was a move. Like, clearly he's going to try to dispose of a body. You know what I mean? Like, so, and then this guy was, I think we eventually decided we need to make contact with her. And the strategy that we took was, let's see if we can just get him to separate. You always want to take the victim, or the suspect, and you want to get them as far away from everything else that you care about. So whether that's out of the house, out of the room, you want to separate those two entities. We know we couldn't separate the parents because they were tied up. So the idea was to see if we can get him to come out. So we started with a ruse, and we had his cell phone number, obviously, because we eventually had to call the daughter and say, hey, are you aware that this is going on? But before we told her what's going on, we had local police collect her so that we had control over where she was, so we didn't lose track of her. But
this is the ex-wife or girlfriend or whatever of the guy.
This is the ex-wife. So
the daughter of the hostages.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So, and she was up north somewhere. So we have her go to the police station, and I talked to her and got an idea of kind of where this came from, what this guy's triggers are, what he might ask for. And then we finally decided we need to make contact, because, you don't want to start until you're ready, but you also don't want to, wait so long waiting for everything to be perfect that something very bad happens to these two people. So we ended up calling into him, and I tried to ruse him out of the house by saying there was something with his van. I think I said, hey, this is the Long Beach Police Department. Do you own a van that's like this? Yes. Well, it got towed. Do you want to come down and get it? And good on him. He immediately knew that wasn't the case.
Okay.
Like, yeah.
So the ruse is like, you don't even let on that there's hostages. You're just like, your van's fucked up, man. You want to come down here and handle it?
Right.
Or
right.
Okay. And he sees right through it. He's like, so what happens next? Is he like, no, you're looking in the windows right now. Fuck you.
He said, it's funny the things you remember, but he said, yeah, I think we both know that's not true.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm going to make him say it. Like, I'm going to keep playing dumb. I'm like, well, so you don't want your van? I think I said something like that, but he's like, I don't give a shit about the van. I want to talk to my ex. And so then we're in it. I'm like, okay, so why? What's going on? Tell me what's going on. So one of the first things I want to do is bring the reality of the situation to him. You always start with like, why don't you come out and we'll figure this out? That usually is like not, you don't want to wait till the end to ask him to come out. Like, he's not barricaded until he refuses to come out. So I'm like, hey, why don't you come out? We obviously know there's a problem. I don't want to be specific. I don't want to tip my hand. It's my job to figure out as much stuff about him. I don't want him to know anything about me. So I'm not going to say, I know you've got them tied to two chairs, because then he might go, okay, now I need to move them. So I just said, look, obviously this is a bad situation. I don't want this to get any worse. I don't want anybody to get hurt, including you. Come out and talk to me. No, if I come out, you're going to shoot me. So we're getting through all the stereotype stuff. Like, we're going through all the easy stuff first. If I come out, you're going to kill me. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. Okay. Well, then I'm not going to try to convince you otherwise. What's your end? Well, is there anybody in the house with you? Yeah, my in-laws, or whatever he called them. Why don't you let them go so you and I can talk? No, because then I don't have any leverage. Like, fuck. Like, what I appreciated about it is sometimes it takes 4 hours to get to that. Like, they just keep talking in circles, and they can't latch onto an idea. This guy was like, we were getting down to it quick. We were not on scene very long. Spoiler alert. So
was the girlfriend refusing to speak to him, and that's why this all started?
So she had left she had told him, I'm going to leave and move to Northern California. And he said, you can't do that. It's my kid. So he's having, I guess what is a fair conversation, which is, I don't want to lose my kid. And I think that she said, well, I'm going up there to like look at property or look at an apartment or something like that. So she wasn't permanently moved out, but she had left. And so this was his idea of like,
she left, hey, and she left and she took the kid, and then he freaked out.
Right. And so he knew that she was gone. Yeah. And so it was, okay, now that I know that you're going to be gone, now this is my last move. And obviously his drugs played a part and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So also my AirPod just started to die because we talked for 2 hours before.
Uh-oh. Well,
we'll see how long it goes.
We'll do as best we can.
Yeah, we'll soldier through. So so we're going through all, like, I'm checking all the boxes, like, come out. No, you're going to hurt me. No, we won't. And we start to get to like, well, okay, will you let them go? No, then I don't have leverage. Okay, why do you need leverage? So it's really good to ask him these open-ended questions, because I want to see where his head's at. Why do you need leverage? Well, because I want to talk to my wife. What, do you think she won't talk to you? The reason we don't put her on the phone is because we don't control that conversation. If he says, I want to talk to my wife, like conventional wisdom would be, well, let him talk to her. Maybe that'll make him happy and he'll come out. The problem is that if he says, I want to talk to my wife, and I just give it to him, he might say, okay, I want you to listen to me kill your parents. I don't control the outcome of that. And I need him to know that he doesn't control the situation. That is really important. There's a negotiator movie out there starring a certain Hollywood star about negotiators. And that's one of, like, you never say no to a hostage taker. And it's like, that's not true. That's not so true. You don't want to just say no. You tell them, well, hold on. Why do you need a helicopter? Or if I give you a helicopter, then that defeats this purpose. Or I can try to work on that, but I don't have a helicopter sitting here, so let's work on it from another angle. You need to work around these requests, but the hostage taker needs to know that they are not in control. Because if they're in control, then they're going to do whatever they want. You need them to fear some consequence. And so if his consequence is, I'm not going to get to talk to my wife, then that's the thing I need to hold over his head. That's my hook. You want to talk to your wife. I control whether or not you talk to her. And I told him, we have her with the police right now. So she doesn't even have her cell phone on her. And until you and I can assure that nobody's going to get hurt, you don't get to talk to her. Now, his other card to play is, let me talk to her in 1 minute or I'm going to start killing people. But if he makes a declarative like that, then they're just going to breach. They're going to go full breach, make entry, and
they're not going to flashbang though, because there's hostages in there.
Oh, they would flashbang that. Oh no, they would.
Oh, they're going to flashbang.
The other flashbang that we talked about earlier was because it was a kid. No, they would flashbang the shit out of that house. It would be thunder and lightning for sure. Yeah, and they might even use gas and go, "Sorry, mom and dad." Like,
what kind of gas is that? That's like tear gas.
So tear gas is actually like grade, like there's like mace and then tear gas, and then it starts to go up the spectrum. Like the top of the spectrum is something called OC, and I forget what it's called, what it stands for, but OC, it's horrible. It's oil based,
okay,
so it doesn't wash off. Like it has to dry and flake off. It's what the police officers all carry OC spray now, but you rarely see police officers use it because we all had to be exposed to it in the academy, like get sprayed in the face.
Yeah.
And if you use it on a bad guy, chances are it's going to get on you and nobody wants it.
The wind is going to blow a little of that on you.
Right. It's going to get something. You're going to put it in your cards.
You've been OC'd. Is that what we call that? Being OC'd?
Yeah. I think cops will still call it getting pepper sprayed, even though it's not. Like, again, it's like mace, pepper spray, tear gas. Like pepper spray is like civilian stuff that civilians can buy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you still call it getting pepper sprayed, even though it's OC spray.
But so I'm just going to roll with OC'd. You have been
okay.
You've been OC'd.
Yes.
Oh man,
really.
Do we want to talk about that, or you want to finish the story about these?
Let me finish.
Yeah.
Let me finish the story so it doesn't jump around so much, and then we'll come back to the crap they make you do in the academy. So
I was just excited about them flashbanging this guy.
Yes. So one of the things that happens on these type of call outs is they will the tactical commander, who's ever in charge of the call, knows all of his resources and starts having like all these different plans. Like ideally we want to be ready to make immediate entry into the house. They also have what's called a high ground plan. So that's the snipers. So snipers, what is your deal? Like this is evolving the whole time, but they'll have an entry plan. They'll have a gas plan. They'll have a less lethal plan, like beanbag shotguns, 40 millimeter launchers, dogs. So they start to put together like, what do we get? If A happens, we do this. If B happens, we do this. They want to end it peacefully always. That is always the goal. So we don't want to go to like, let's just go in there and start shooting and see what happens, because that's the acceptable loss here is 0. We don't want to lose either of the hostages. So they want to give the negotiator a chance to see if we can bring it to a peaceful outcome without using anything. That's always the goal. And it's incumbent upon the negotiator to communicate to the tactical commander, like whether or not they think they've got their hooks in this guy. And that's something that the tactical commander for the Long Beach team and I got along very well. And he would ask me like, are you making any headway? Do you have this guy? And there are times where I would go, yeah, I'm able to move him. He's listening to me. He's communicating, he's answering questions. He's talking on the phone. And there's other times where, like in this case, where I'm like, I don't have him. Like I have 0 control over this guy other than the fact that I'm distracting him. But he is going through a checklist, and there will be an end to this checklist where he's going to do something violent because he knows he's out of options. Mm-hmm. So this I never gave up hope that I can end it peaceably, but what I'm relaying to the team is I don't have control over this person. Like this guy was prepared, for lack of a better term. So we start getting to the point where I know he's not going to leave. He's not going to leave the room where these people are. He's not going to let them go. He's not giving me specifics that I can work on. Like, I want to talk to my wife. I told him, you're not going to talk to them until you let these people go. And I know they're going to be okay. I tried to well, release one of them, release the mom. Let's let the lady go and don't worry about her. And then you still have dad. So it's like, if I can save one life, let's see what we can do. And nope, nobody's leaving. So he was stonewalling me at every turn. And we had 2 people that were injured and we don't know the extent of their injury. So then that's my goal. Okay. How badly are they hurt? Don't worry about it. Are they bleeding? Do they need medical attention? They're fine. And we know that's not true because the person who saw him through the window was like, dad had blood on his face and they're tied to a chair. So that also affects what we do, is how badly do we need to get in there? If they're like, hey, this guy's bleeding to death, like, we don't have any time. We got to go in and try to save him. Mm-hmm. So eventually, somewhere along the way, not so that this isn't the longest story ever, the decision was made that we have to try to eliminate him through the use of lethal force, because we're running out of time. We don't know the extent of the injuries. And so the goal then became, let's see if we can get him outside of the house in the backyard, because if we can, then he's easier to shoot. And so that became my mission, was to talk to him and try to get him to the backyard. And I think what eventually ended up happening was, the tactic I took was I can't hear you, like your phone's breaking up. So he kept moving, and then he got to the back, and then he gave me an opening. He said, like, I don't even believe that you've got all the cops you say you do. Because I said, that you can't get out. Like, you can't get away. You're gonna have to come out the way I want you to come out. And then he's like, yeah, you don't have all the bodies you say you have. And I said, I think you know that I do. I think you know that this place is completely surrounded if we're having this conversation. And I told him, he's like, well, I'm not gonna, you're gonna have to prove it or something like that. He wanted some evidence, like, well, okay, well, where are they? Are they on the roof? Are they there? And I said, what I know is you don't have the balls to step outside and check for yourself. I know that. And for whatever reason, he did. And when he mumbled something, and I remember saying his name, and then I remember hearing the report from the rifle. Like, I didn't even hear it into the phone. I just heard the report from the rifle over my head, like, oh my God. And then I hear on the radio, subject down, red 1, which means somebody got shot and went down. So there's very few times in my career that I've had to try to put somebody in a position where somebody from the high ground team can shoot him. This was one of those situations where we had kind of exhausted all of our resources, and our window was usually I'll talk to you for 10 hours. If you want to talk for 2 days and it's just you and me on the phone, I can wear you down. The longer these negotiations go, the longer I have you on the phone, the more likely you are to give up peaceably and go, okay, I'm done. I play the long game, but when I know that somebody is injured, I don't have that luxury anymore. So then it becomes like, how long are we willing to wait? Because our entry team is really good and our high ground team is really good. And it was only a matter of time before he exposed himself. But we had to make sure we exhausted every single resource before, because you don't want to shoot anybody. I mean, it's contrary to what a lot of people believe. The police hate shooting people. It's not, you want to see him go to court and have to answer for this. Like, it's almost too easy of a way out.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And so you got the people in there, they're injured, they're potentially bleeding out. So you have a kind of a clock on it because you need to get to them and render aid and
exactly right.
Make sure that they're not gonna die basically from their injuries.
That stuff that you don't know ends up driving more of your tactics than you want it to. But the fact of the matter, so I even tried that. Like, let me talk to them. No. Like, a lot of times people are like, yeah, talk to them. And then I can get a lot of information. So there's a lot of things that tend to work that this guy was just stonewalling everything.
And you probably would have found out if they were okay. If they could have told you, hey, you know what, we're fine. Mm-hmm. And that would have actually bought him time.
Yes. And it absolutely would have. If he would have said, talk to him, and they would have said, you know what, we're fine. We're scared, but we're okay. If we had known that and we didn't have any other evidence other than them saying they're okay, I mean, still you're like, maybe he's making them say that, but But yeah, that would have
They're
bought
not
him a lot more
they're
time.
they're not totally fine. I mean, they'd rather not be there, but like,
Right.
we're not
They're not
bleeding
having a
out.
good time. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. And so, and it's, again, we were talking about just humans committing atrocities on each other. Like this guy wanted, this guy felt helpless in his life and he was trying to affect some change, to have some control over the situation with his daughter. So he goes and takes these two elderly people. And I mean, the stuff that he did to them is probably not appropriate to talk about, but he just did a lot of stuff that you would go, what was the point of that? And it was all about control. I need to be in control of these people, from physically taping them down to a chair to the things that he did to them. They
Yeah,
were, they were old.
you mentioned he was abusing them and possibly there was some sexual violence involved.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's not
So
good.
there, it's pretty terrible, but it's one of those things. And that's why it sounds really cliche, but like, that's why you want to get good at the thing that you're doing, because even though, how many times are you actually going to be in a hostage situation? It doesn't happen that much in real life. It happens maybe, and again, if it does, it's a prison riot or it's a bank takeover. And for the most part, it's
Who
what we're
handles
doing is,
prison riots? Is that SWAT team's jurisdiction?
so that's the FBI as well.
Ah,
So
damn.
yeah. So anything that's federal. So that's a good question. I guess if it was like a county, I guess if it was like a county jail, maybe the county SWAT team would handle it. That's probably right. So
Hmm.
all the case studies that I've read that are prison riot were all federal prisons. So it was all FBI stuff, but
So
probably
your
because those are the most
your
interesting.
stuff is mostly like store robberies
Mm-hmm.
or like the hostage situation that you just talked about. That's
Yeah,
what's under
that
your purview.
yeah, a lot of it is suicidal subjects, uh, um, people who've committed a crime and have barricaded themselves in their apartment, their house, and don't want to come out. Either they're threatening to kill themselves, or they're like, "Hey, go away! I don't want to talk to you. If somebody comes in here, I'll shoot you." Some of them are mentally unstable people that have done things. Like we had one where some mentally ill person found a gun in the house that wasn't secured and started firing it up in the air. And then we put up a perimeter and like, hey, come out. And now I'm dealing with somebody who's schizophrenic and manic and, trying to get them to, okay, now what do I need to know about a schizophrenic person? Like, how do I manipulate a schizophrenic person? Well, I have to buy into their delusion to to some extent. I have to like get no bright lights. Like we light up the house. You flood it with light because light is a weapon. You can't see when somebody puts a light in your face,
I
but
see
it's
I see
agitating this person,
I see why you were so well prepared to work in Hollywood.
right? So it honestly being, it's weird because we were talking about this earlier, that how one skill set, you think like I have this skill set, so it means I can do this, but really it applies oddly in another area. And that I can tell you right now, the reason that I was good at security when I first started doing it was because of my negotiator crisis communication training, because I can have a conversation with just about anybody.
Bless you. And because you have worked with the mentally ill.
Right. Yeah. And quite honestly, like you think about like one of the things that we do with the mentally ill is deal with people who are delusional. How many people in Hollywood are delusional? You know what I mean?
All of them.
More than 90%. A healthy
I'm
percentage.
definitely never getting a job again now.
Right. I was gonna say, man, you may want to edit that out. Talk about how lovely Hollywood is
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
how wonderfully talented they are.
Yes, they're all so talented and amazing. I need a
Yeah,
job.
yeah. If you're hiring, his email is jeffaffle3@gmail.com.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, yeah, the majority of the time you're dealing with people that are gonna, they're suicidal, they're jumpers, they're barricades, they've committed a crime and they panicked and ran into their own apartment, and you're, hey man, let's not make it any worse. So a lot of it is de-escalating and dissociating themselves from what they did. Like, hey, don't worry about that. Let's talk about this. So.
Yeah, I grew up, as you know, close to DC, and I remember
Mhm.
when I was a teenager, there was a house. The SWAT team came because some guys broke into a house. They were robbing a house, but no one was in the house.
Okay.
And I think someone saw them go in and called the
Mhm.
cops, but I'm not sure why the SWAT team had to come. Maybe they said they saw that they were armed Because just going
Could
into a
be.
house isn't necessarily SWAT team, is it?
So it depends, right? So if you say sadly, sometimes it comes down to money, like how much, because it's expensive to call out the SWAT team. It's a lot of, you're expending a lot of resources. So if it's an abandoned house and you know people went in there, then patrol officers may just surround and go, hey, you need to come out. And maybe even something they walk away from, like, whose house is this? Do they care that somebody is potentially squatting inside of it? I mean, there's times where the scenario you just said, we get a call about that and it's an abandoned house and we can't get a hold of the owner and it's just a homeless person that's in there. But still, like, our obligation is to safely get that person out. A lot of times people will just come out, you know, if they haven't committed a big crime and they're like, what's the big deal? Like, but yeah, if somebody said he went in there and he had a gun, so there's certain criteria that a department will have of, like, if any of these things exist, it is deemed a SWAT call out. So it's not just arbitrary, like, I don't know, let's call SWAT on this one. So if it's the person's a violent person or known to commit violence or has threatened violence or he's armed and threatened to use the weapon, and you know, if it's one of these crimes, we'll always call out SWAT. So SWAT just has a lot of additional tools, training, tactics, like they practice how to put a box around a problem and solve it with the least risk to the innocent people and the person who's committed the crime. So yeah, if it's just a residential burglary and there's nobody else in there, then they may not call out SWAT, but they might. So it's just it depends on their.
You ever get any suspects that you're working a call and they start shooting back out the house at you guys?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, it's most people. So the time I'm thinking of, this was somebody who was mentally unstable, and I think drugs are also playing a part. But most people recognize that if you shoot out at the police, you are going to force our hand because you don't know where that bullet's going. I mean, hopefully it's aimed at a cop and not at, you know, the house next door. But if you're in a residential neighborhood and somebody fires a gun out, that's going to elicit an immediate response from the police department. So we had a guy that shot at the police. He shot at some gang detectives in an alley. They tried to stop this kid. He pulls his gun and shoots kind of over his shoulder and runs. And they chase him. They're like, we think he's in this house. We put up a perimeter. They call out SWAT. And then while they're kind of executing a plan, I remember the dispatcher was like, somebody just called in and said that the person you're looking for is under the porch next to your vehicle. And like all of us went, oh my God, like he was 25 feet away from us under this porch at this house. We did not see that he was there. So he's under the house. You can see, you know, it's a porch in Long Beach, so it's not like a big southern porch. It's small, but you can see him under there. He's got the gun in his hand. So I didn't even get to talk to the kid. I was the negotiator that was going to make contact when we found him, but one of the SWAT operators were just like, hey man, drop the gun, drop the gun, drop the gun. And he won't put the gun down. He's still got it. So he's like an immediate threat right now, but he's not really pointing it. He just got it under there. So we're like, throw the gun, get away from the gun, crawl away from the gun. And the decision was made really quickly to let the dog go. And so the canine handler released the dog, and the guy shot the dog and killed the canine.
Aww.
And because he fired a gun at the officers, he got shot a lot by the SWAT team because he had a lot of guns pointed at him. So if you're starting to shoot now, some people would say, well, you shot him because you shot your dog. And some of us would admit to that if we weren't on the record. But technically, we're not supposed to shoot somebody because they harm a dog because they're a piece of equipment, not an animal, not an animal.
Right. Oh, hang on. Did I lose you?
Damn it.
No. I got you back. I got you back. I think, that one's dead.
Something magic will happen.
Can you hear me?
I hear you now. Okay.
Okay, good.
Note to the audience, we had a little AirPod issue, and we are back.
I didn't think about that when we were riffing for 2 hours. I was draining my AirPods.
Yeah.
I put them in the little case. Maybe they shall charge.
They'll charge a little, but did you take one out? Maybe the one that you took out is good to go.
I did. I took one out, but it had only been like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So
okay.
We'll see.
Well, that was a pretty sad story anyways.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good one to end on, I guess.
Yeah. How often how many people have you flash banged?
I have been present for countless flash bangings because one of the things that the SWAT team does is serve high risk warrants. So if they have a search warrant looking for a guy who did a shooting or a guy who's a homicide suspect, we'll get there at 4 o'clock in the morning and go out and put up the perimeter. And then the negotiators will just do the announcements over the PA, like, hey, it's the Long Beach Police Department, come out with your hands up. And they'll just, that's when they do a dynamic entry. They throw the flashbangs in because it disorients you. And then they go in. So I've heard a lot of flashbangs go off. I've seen people throw a lot of flashbangs, never personally done it.
Now, I know that you have to be pepper sprayed in training, but do you have to be flash banged?
No, actually. And thank God. In the academy, they're very big on us being exposed to the things that we use that are not lethal so that we understand what kind of application of force we're using. Mm-hmm. So like they have to shoot us with a taser. Like
you get clubbed, you get bashed in the leg with a club.
So luckily, not on purpose. So we train a lot with our batons, but we have to like hold the heavy bag for our partners when they're practicing, and people miss all the time. And you get hit in the leg, and you're like, ugh. So we get taser, and we get pepper spray, and we get OC spray. So we get the tear gas. So like in a riot situation or a mobile field force situation, the things that fire out of the cannons and you see go on the ground and then smoke everybody out, we have to walk through that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, it's real. I don't know how anybody fights through it. It's really uncomfortable. It just hurts.
And being tased is pretty awful too, huh?
It's the worst.
Yeah.
It only lasts for 5 seconds, but it's funny because my girlfriend just graduated the academy like a year ago, and in the academy she was saying, hey, they're saying you can voluntarily get tased. You don't have to get it, but it's voluntary. And I told her, don't do it. And she goes, no, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna be tough. I'm gonna do it. And I said, look, in your head, you're thinking it's gonna hurt a lot because what you think is a lot is this. And so you're like, okay, it's gonna hurt a lot, and I agree to that. In reality, it's this. It's a different kind of pain you haven't experienced, and it's the idea behind a taser is it's a neuromuscular incapacitator. So it stops.
It makes you freeze, right?
Yeah.
Don't you drop to the ground and you can't move?
Yes. It interrupts your brain's ability to talk to your muscles. So you are having a full body spasm, like you're just locked up. If it works correctly.
Is it a spasm or a seizure?
Seizure? I don't know.
Everything's seizing up. I imagine
everything is like
locked. You're locked.
You can't move. You can't move.
Does it also feel like electricity going through your body at the same time?
So honestly, I've never been electrocuted. Like I've been like sparked before, like, ow, damn it.
Yeah.
But the way I described it when it happened to me many years ago was it felt like I was getting hit by 1,000 hammers at the same time. Like everything in my body hurt at the same time. And your brain immediately thinks, this is wrong. This isn't what this is supposed to feel like. So now you're scared. So I was really glad that I couldn't speak when it was happening to me, because I was very cowardly trying to say, stop, like make it stop. Yeah. Instead of like taking it like a tough guy. But I think in the video it's just me going like,
is it one of those things where it's the kind of prongs that stick into you? And then are they holding a trigger down to keep that power flowing, or is it like a one jolt kind of situation?
So the way a taser works is when you pull the trigger, 2 darts come out, and the spread, like if it hits your shoulder and your low back, the spread between those 2 darts, the electricity goes through your body in the shortest path possible. So it'll go like to your spinal cord, through your brain, and up to the other point. So you have to get a good spread. You see a lot of videos of cops shooting people with tasers and they're still able to move. It means you didn't get a good connection. That's a taser not working.
That was going to be my question, is why do you see these videos and people are unfazed by it? That's a bad shot. People
are like, well, he was on drugs. It doesn't matter. You can be on PCP. It doesn't matter if the taser works correctly. So a lot of the times the dart won't make a good connection, or it gets like they're wearing really thick clothing. So, you know, the more if you're very muscular and your shirt is off and your back is sweaty and you shoot him in the back, that's like the most ideal. Like you shirtless,
Yeah.
you're the best taser target ever.
I'm jacked.
Yeah, exactly. All of your muscles.
Yeah.
Right there.
So, shit. Could you, if you were if someone was shooting a taser at you, could you potentially swat one of the pins down and defeat it in that way?
I guess I don't know how fast it's coming, but it's pretty fast.
It's
It's
pretty
like
fast.
it's got like black. It's like a primer and black powder. It's like a bullet. Like
Oh,
it's
okay.
pretty fast, but obviously it's not rifled or anything like that. It's just coming out of the bay doors. Probably like if you anticipated when they did it, maybe you could duck it, but um, but
I'm not planning on needing to duck it, but
no, I would say
for the
don't
audience, you know.
don't make that your plan.
Yeah.
It's a plan with a very low success rate.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you pull the trigger on a taser, it's going to cycle for 5 seconds and then stop.
Okay.
It used to be, and this is an old version of a taser, is if you held the trigger down, it would go for 5 seconds and then keep cycling. But they had to have a fix for that because there was an officer who was on a traffic stop by herself. The guy gets out and deserves to get tased, and she shoots him with the taser, and he drops. And she just holds it down and gets on the radio and was like, yeah, I need another unit to come help. And she held the trigger down for like 2.5 minutes or something like that, which I can't even fathom that. I don't think I survived.
Do you when you get hit by a taser, is there a little do you piss or shit yourself?
You can. You certainly can. It's not in the manual that's supposed to happen, but it definitely is. I could see how somebody could, because like I said, you tighten up.
Yeah.
So if you gotta go and you get tased, you might.
Did your girlfriend get tased or did she opt out?
No, she did it.
Oh no.
She's the funny thing is that to this day, and I guess it's a rite of passage. She did it. Everybody in her class decided we're all going to do it. We're going to be tough together and we're going to be unified. So they all did it. And I'm like, was it worse than you thought? She's like, oh yeah, it was way worse.
It's way worse.
It's way worse. My partner did the same thing. Not to tell too many taser stories, but my partner graduated the academy, and he's 28, 29 now. So he's been a cop for 5 years. He went to an academy where they did not require you to do it. So a bunch of people didn't do it. And he's like, yeah, I kind of wish I would have done it. I said, no, you don't. That's your ego talking. It's horrible. Don't do it. So we went to a training class a couple of years ago for our department, and we're talking about tasers. And one of the instructors was like, hey, after lunch, Taylor has decided that he'll take a voluntary exposure. So we'll do that. And I'm like, oh, no. Oh, no, he's not. Like, no, you're not going to bully him into that. And he's like, no, I want to do it. I want to do it. And I'm like, I really wish you hadn't said that. And so he got shot. He took it like a man, but he's like, that hurt 100 times worse than I thought it was going to hurt. Like it's awful. It's really, really bad.
Well, if I don't get a Hollywood job and I become a cop, just let me know which departments allow you to opt out.
Right.
And that's where I will try out for.
If you take nothing away from our relationship, if and when you become a police officer, put your ego aside and go, no, thank you. I do not need a taser exposure.
I feel like if we had not had this conversation, I would have been like, let's do it, baby.
Oh yeah.
Shirt's coming off right in the back. Hit me.
What I know about you, absolutely. You would have said, even if it sucks, it's going to suck for 5 seconds.
Yeah.
The problem is it changes your idea of what ouch feels like.
Oh,
like I said, it's just such a jarring experience. So I'm glad I was able to save you from this terrible, terrible pain.
Thank you. And if Hollywood rejects me any further, then I might have to be a cop. So
look, we'll take you. I think your unique life perspective and and your fuck it attitude are exactly what we're looking for.
Yeah, let's do this. And I've always wanted to drive a cop car.
Yes, and we might be getting Teslas, so stand by.
Whoa,
yeah,
man,
that's the thing.
That's kind of cool. I mean, Teslas are fast as fuck, man.
Yep.
You remember when we had a Tesla, like for our job? That is,
It
was not our Tesla, you know.
Like
we're roommates or something.
It was our Tesla in the royal we sense of it. Yeah.
We worked together, and there was one in the company name.
Yes, we had access to
that we borrowed from time to time. Did I ever tell you I got pulled over by an undercover detective driving that Tesla?
No, I did not. You did not tell me that.
Should I tell this story on the air?
You should, as long as you also tell the story about the Aston Martin in Miami.
Ooh, man. Aston, honestly, the Vantage was my favorite Aston,
Yeah.
which is actually considered the lower tier. But it's
Interesting.
smaller. It's
Yeah.
smaller and more nimble.
Interesting.
But many years ago, we used to work doing like high end security. I wasn't a security guy. I was just around.
We were on a team together, though, for sure.
We were on a team together.
Yeah.
Audience, if you're curious, put a comment and ask, and we can
Right.
elaborate. um, but we had a Tesla in the company, and I was fucking rolling in that thing, man. And these were like, they were new at the time, so it was like
Yeah.
a really cool experience to be in like a silent car with like
That was the
massive
weirdest part.
acceleration.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they changed that. I think they added some sound effects to them.
Really?
Yeah, I think it was for the deaf. But so I'm gonna have to edit this episode a lot, but
I'm
that's
having
good.
fun.
It's good. It's good. So I was rolling in this fucking Tesla, man, and I flew by a Impala, like an early 2000s Impala with like faded blue paint. It had like sunspots in the paint and tinted windows. And the guy he stared at me as I passed him. I could the windows were tinted, but I could still see the guy. And I'm like, it's a faded paint Impala with
Yeah.
tints. Like that's not a cop. So I fucking blast by. I'm on the highway. Couple of minutes goes by and the Impala's right on my ass with red and blues. And I'm like, no fucking
Right.
way.
Come on. Who's got such a piece of shit car? Like, what
I'm
department
like,
doesn't paint their cars?
I'm like, what is this? I'm like, is
Jeez.
this? I'm like, it's got to be a fake cop. I should just keep going.
Yeah, right.
This is
Security guard.
Baltimore. So I do pull over, and he was no uniform, but he had one of those dangly chains with like the leather wallet with the badge
Yeah.
on it. It's like straight out of a movie.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Hey man, I am a detective. I don't pull people over ever."
Right.
He goes, "You were doing well over 100 for several miles." So
So are you. You tell him that?
I'm like, "How'd you catch me in that piece of shit?"
Yeah.
But I don't even remember what I said. I was just like, "Shit, I'm sorry, man. This is like one of those new silent electric cars. I don't know what to tell you." No,
Right.
I played it pretty cool, and he hooked me up. He gave me a ticket, but he didn't write like hundreds of
I
miles
can't
an
believe he even
hour.
wrote you a ticket.
Yeah,
That actually surprises me.
they can this is years ago, so they're not going to retroactively double jeopardy me on this shit, but
No. Oh, no. This has been adjudicated. You're good.
this has been adjudicated. But yeah, he hooked me up in the sense that there's apparently a type of ticket where you don't write the speed, you just write like speed too excessive for highway.
Yeah.
And so I got that, which is significantly better than like well over 100.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, so
I never knew that. You never told me that story.
I didn't. I might have told you. Maybe we blanked that one out.
Maybe you did so many shenanigans that they all meshed together.
We did. We talked about this before we started recording, but we did crash a boat in my second week on the job.
That is true.
Yeah,
That
and
is
we
true.
like not even in a bad way. That was
Save a life.
That was an
Save a life.
important crash. That was a crash. Injured man on boat is what we declared to
Right.
the what do you call it? The marina manager, who was
Yes.
very displeased.
The very upset gentleman who is in charge of monitoring the wake
Yes.
of everybody who comes through that small town.
The wake
furious.
monitor in a very small town was not happy with us.
I will say that because I had no experience driving a boat whatsoever in our line of work and on our team for our boss, we did a whole lot of things that were like, I have no reason to be doing what I'm doing. I have no skill set whatsoever. Driving a boat was one of them across a very large body of water to a vacation home. I will say, I did not know that you couldn't. I thought you could just go as fast as you want. I didn't know there were speed limits in boats. They're like, no wake zone. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. I don't know what a wake is.
Injured man on boat.
I
Fuck the
clearly didn't know
wake.
how to. I
We got
clearly
a
didn't
man that's
know.
about to lose his toe here.
Dude, that was I legitimately, and I think because I was an EMT for like 5 minutes, I think that my one little tiny bit of training scared me enough that this guy was going to die. I'm like, because it was cold, he'd been bleeding for a while, and I did not know how far away the hospital was. And I'm like, he is going to go into shock and die
You
from
know,
a
I'm
from a
gonna be
cut toe.
honest. We worked together for many years, and we've talked about this a couple of times. But I'm gonna tell you that thought never crossed my mind. I never thought that he might die. I was just like, man, we told you not to jump off the boat. We told you. So for the audience that's listening, if you've made it this far, we were inexperienced boat drivers, and we asked the participants on our boat excursion not to get in the water. The water was actually freezing cold and full of jellyfish,
And it was getting dark.
and it was getting dark, and I think a thunderstorm might have been rolling
We
in.
knew that that's why we were hurrying. It had already started to rain, and they're like,
Yeah.
"The storm is coming."
We were actually, I think, like at one point running away from the storm.
Yep. No, you're right. You're 100% right.
But someone decided at one point when the boat was stopped that they wanted to jump in. They jumped in the water, which was full of jellyfish. And not only did they get covered in jellyfish stings, but they kicked the prop. The prop was not in motion, but they just swam near it. And I think we had an issue with our trim, and the trim wasn't raising, and so it was in the water. And they swam by. They kicked it with their toe. And then
Yeah.
we had to speed back into the marina and take the guy to the hospital with his toe nearly severed off.
Right.
And I remember Ryan was like, "All right, you're gonna get up to the front of the boat and just help guide us in." And I'm like, at the last second, I'm like, I need to back away. And we just like slammed into the fucking dock, man. And I'm like, that was
That
like
really,
week on the
like,
job.
I'm surprised there wasn't significant damage on that boat with how hard we hit it. And like I was saying earlier, I'm so glad you had the foresight and the intelligence to get off the bow of that boat, because in my head, as soon as I throw it in reverse, this boat's going to stop, and it didn't stop. It kept going.
On a lighter note, you might not remember this, but I remember that I did almost buck you off the boat once when we were parking. We were
Did you really?
parking. We were in like a really narrow, busy parking area where I had to like go in and turn it
I
around.
remember we had to like parallel park the boat a couple of times. We're both like, I can barely do this with a car.
Yeah. And I do remember like I went like forward backward on the throttle like too aggressively, and I look back and you're like stumbling. I'm like, "Oh no."
I think because the majority of the time I had to drive, that I was like, I know that, and then you started driving, and I thought, I know how hard this is, so I'm going to be a hero and jump off the boat onto the dock and pull the tail in to help you park it. And so I was like, not as bright as you, and up on the edge, and you like,
Yeah, so we were boat guys for a while.
yeah, nautical
You know,
gentlemen.
this show used to be hosted by a former Navy SEAL, so we look like all stars right now with our
Right. It's
with our
Navy
boating.
SEAL guys that drove a boat with no experience. It's a lot in common. That was our SEAL Team 6 operation right there.
We had a
We did
lot of
not leave
fun
a
on
man
that boat.
behind.
We had a lot of fun on that boat, man.
We did. There were a lot of times where we were the order of the day was get the boat ready, and I remember like, oh my god, like I'm so bad at this, but there were a lot of fun times. We had all of our trauma had a good purpose.
I found it funny too, because we were working like around some high net worth individuals. You know, you were the security guy, and I was kind of like the helper extraordinaire or whatever. And I remember in this particular boat, there were several boats, but in this particular one, to get down to the dock was like a very long, winding wooden path down
Yes.
to like a like a like a wooded hill.
Yeah.
And I'm carrying like cases of beer and like cases of water, and like
Very
it
physical
was
job.
it was a time. It was a time in
Yeah.
our lives for sure.
Remember we were talking about like we need like a zip line from the top of that hill down to the dock, and just like, here
I
comes
just wanted
Piers.
I wanted like one of those old people chairs,
Yeah,
you know, that I could just sit on and it would just kind
yeah.
of whiz me all the way down.
Do you remember what the solution was eventually? How we started getting stuff down to the dock and back up?
Were we driving a golf cart down there?
That's it.
Yeah. The best
The
part
day
is when
we figured that out.
I was alone one time making golf cart runs down to the boat,
Mhm.
and the golf cart was not fully charged, and
No,
the battery died before I
no.
got it up. And I had to ask the groundskeeper to bring his riding mower down and pull me up with a rope.
I do remember you telling me that now. I
He
do
had to
remember
pull me
that.
up with a rope.
Oh my
Uh,
God.
and well, one time he went over the edge of the hill with the riding mower, and I had to pull him up with the SUV.
What?
Oh yeah, he went over the edge and he asked me. He came. And he said, "Hey, do you have a rope?" And I said, "What for?" And he said, "Well, can we tie it to the truck? And I need you to pull me out. I went over the hill there, and now I can't drive it up."
Who would have known that this area had so many treacherous angles where you can get all these vehicles?
Yeah,
He has no excuse. He had experience riding that mower. That was
that
not.
was his
Uh,
land to keep. I was new here.
yeah, that's so funny. It's weird because we were talking about things that we've done, and you'll like that story you just told. Like I would tell that story, like, oh yeah, I was driving the boat, I was driving the golf cart down the ramp to the boat to drop stuff off, and the battery died and had to be towed up. And people will go, "Wow, you've had such interesting things happen." And I'm like, "That's not interesting. That's just it makes me look dumb."
Yeah, I was just living the life,
Yeah, that
not
was that. There
not
was a
paying
lot of
attention
fun
to the
stuff,
battery.
right? Now you know how to appropriately gauge charge
Yeah.
in this green economy we're living in.
Yes, yes. So, anyways, this came up because of Tesla cop cars. So,
Yes. So yeah, I don't know if this will be interesting, but um, there is one of the sales reps at Tesla. He very much wants to push into the law enforcement like market.
I think
So
it's a cool idea.
I can tell you. So I'm a driving instructor
Oh,
of one of the many weird certifications I have. One of them is we have what's called EVOC, which is Emergency Vehicle Operations Course. So I'm an instructor in that. I went to a 2-week school to learn how to drive slow and drive fast,
hmm.
and I'm allowed to teach other people to do it. But Tesla reached out mostly because in Anaheim we're a very high visibility department because of Disneyland and the sports teams and all that. So they want to. It's a pilot program, so they're giving us 6 Teslas. So we got to drive them. We set up like a pursuit course, so we got to drive them. And I can tell you that I also drove this Tesla that belonged to the company, and so I know what they're capable of. But it's been a while, and I had forgotten. Those things are so fast. And
Yeah.
I can tell you that there's a guy in our agency that's like basically a professional driver. He's a motorcycle cop. He's a sergeant. He's been doing it forever. Very, very, very good driver. And he was in like a really souped up Ford Explorer, which is one of the main vehicles that we drive now.
Hmm.
And we did a simulated pursuit with all this cone patterns where he could drive all over the place. And me and 2 other guys were in Teslas, and we had no trouble keeping up with him at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
If you put him in the same vehicle we're in, he laps us. He laps us 10 times out of 10.
Yeah.
I had no problem keeping up with him. And he was like, I was really trying to lose you guys. So these Teslas, the advantage is these Teslas, their acceleration is so stinking fast. And they handle so well. Like
Yeah.
you can just turn so quick, and any mistake you make, you can correct it really quickly. But they're not real practical for police work. So they're mostly going to be a PR stunt, would be my guess.
Yeah.
Until Tesla actually makes a vehicle, because they're kind of too small.
Oh, really? Which
Yeah,
would they give you the Model Y or something?
yeah, we were driving Model Ys, and it's
Wow.
more and more. You think about like what kind of police car, what kind of car do police officers want? Well, they want a fast one so they can catch people. But more and more, we're not getting in pursuits.
Yeah.
It's. I think people are, even the general public is becoming aware of that the liability is just too high. So if I want to pull somebody over and they try to get away from me, if all I have is a traffic violation, most of the time we let it go,
Yeah.
because if we kill somebody now. Does an average person not want to get a ticket and start driving like a jerk? No. I mean, that's a bad person who's
I was
probably
thinking like chasing someone down in a Tesla sounds like fucking dangerous. I mean,
yeah,
as safe as they're crazy fast. And then you factor in, the other driver who's trying to get away. You don't know what they're gonna do. You don't know, they're
right.
probably very unskilled.
Yeah.
It sounds
No, you're right.
kind of
And
scary.
you're talking about the police officer with training. Like, you can't train somebody enough to drive you know, it's a hard skill to develop. Like, we're not professional drivers. We've taken an awareness course and we have updated training, but at the end of the day, it's like, I'm not a professional driver. I drive more than most people, but these people that when they're trying to get away from you, their adrenaline's up. They're not seeing things. They have no regard for the public. We have to have due regard for the public. So, I was in a pursuit of a stolen vehicle, I don't know, a couple of years ago, and I was in a Dodge Charger, and the vehicle trying to get away was an Audi Q7 SUV or something like that. But it's faster than my car for sure.
Oh,
Top speed anyway. That thing's going to get away from me. But he's going through red lights. Like, he's not stopping. I have to stop at every red light and look. So he's getting 200 yards ahead of me on every signal because I have to stop and he doesn't. And even that pursuit ended up ending because he drove into a neighborhood and double backed right at me, and I just purposely crashed him into a wall so he couldn't get back out onto the highway and kill somebody because he had already driven like 25 miles at.
he was driving straight at you.
Yeah, he didn't realize he went into a residential neighborhood and he was trying to get out.
Yeah,
And the helicopter was overhead, and they're like, oh, he's going north on A Street, west on First Street, south on B Street. And I know in my head, I'm like, he's going to turn that corner and come right at me. So as soon as he came at me, I just hit him into the wall as hard as I could.
and
So,
you've got the big battering ram on the front.
yeah, yeah. The funny thing is I had in my head, I'm going to do what's called a legal intervention, and I'm going to hit his car so he can't get back out onto the freeway, out onto the highway, because he's a big threat to the public. I completely forgot that my airbags would go off. So when I hit his car and my airbags went off, it scared the shit out of me. And I had already taken my rifle out of the, because I didn't know what was going to happen. So I had my rifle slung across me, and every airbag in the whole car went off. And I'm like, oh shit, now I'm sitting in this car. I can't see anything except white bags. And
You're gonna have to shoot your way out with the rifle.
yeah, I was like, man, if he shoots me right now, man, this is gonna be a terrible story. Like,
where did you hit him? Right, just straight in the front of the car, or like quarter panel kind of deal?
so he was coming at me. He kind of tried to turn away from me. We were kind of doing the like coming straight at each other.
Yeah.
And so he kind of veered away, and I ended up hitting like his front driver's side panel, like right at his tire, which pushed his car into the wall, which it broke the axle, disabled his car, and then he got out and started running. I had to chase him. But
oh, you had to chase him.
yeah, luckily luckily when guys run, a lot of times they hunker down. They'll like run like one block and then hide under a car.
They run and hide. They don't just keep running.
Yeah, smart money is keep running.
Yeah, I was gonna say the full sprint does not sound fun to have to chase someone down.
It doesn't, but if you give me time to put a box around it and get resources, like what you have on your side is so far it's just me and a helicopter. So if you can get outside of the perimeter, we can't put a big enough box around it. So some people are smart and just keep running, man. They just Forrest Gump and just don't stop.
I would imagine that's the way. If you want to get away, you just go full sprint and don't stop.
Don't the guys that like hide under a car, like eventually we're going to find you under the car, unless the reason why you're running is so uninteresting. We're not going to set up a perimeter or go get a dog.
And once he goes under the car, that's when you got to flashbang him.
Right, and then you flashbang him right there. Roll it up to him.
What would that do to a car, throwing a flashbang under there?
So
blow it up.
You want to hear a story? So we had a call one time when I was in patrol, but we had a call where a guy calls up and says, my ex-wife, it's like midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. My ex-wife just pulled up to the front of my house. She's in her truck and I think she's passed out drunk, but there's a rifle in the car. So the patrol officer talked to him and said, well, what is she doing there? He's like, I think she's just drunk. I think she wanted to see the kid, but I don't know what she's doing. She did not come and knock on the door, but I can see her truck out there. And I went out to talk to her. She's passed out and there's a rifle in the car. So they end up taking a police car in the front of her car, the police car in the back, so that she's now pinned in. She can't drive away, but she's completely passed out. So they call out the SWAT team. The SWAT team brings their armored vehicle up and the whole thing. At the time, patrol rifles were pretty new, and I was certified on a patrol rifle. So they're like, Ryan, get a patrol rifle and go up on top of a roof in case she grabs her rifle and starts shooting. So I was their lethal high ground cover. And so I'm laying down on this roof with a rifle, and I'm looking the optic, and I can see in the back seat, it looked like a 22 rifle or a BB gun. I couldn't tell what it was, but there was a gun-looking thing in the back seat. So the concern was that she was going to wake up, turn around, grab that rifle, and start shooting. So they're like, how do we get her out of the car? So they go through all of these, like, how do we safely get her out of the car? Because we don't want her to wake up. So somebody on SWAT decides, I know what we'll do. We will throw the flashbang in the flatbed. It was like a Toyota pickup. We'll throw the flashbang in the truck of the bed. It will go off. It'll wake her up. And then we can call her out. Hey, you're awake. Come on out. So, okay, that's what we're going to do. And as soon as she's awake, we'll call her out. If that doesn't work, we're going to fire a beanbag and break the window and let the dog in there. There's a whole elaborate plan. So the guy throws the flashbang, and they're normally very accurate. He throws the flashbang too far. It hits the top of the truck and like pings around on the ground and rolls directly underneath the cab of the truck. And boom, it blows up, and the car is immediately engulfed in flames. Everything's on fire. Like, it was really funny because they're like, all right, flashbang away. Oh shit. Everybody just like, get her out of the car, get her out of the car. So all the tactics went out the window at that point.
Was she okay?
She was fine. It scared the shit out of her, but
it was
God. And I got to see the whole thing from the roof because I'm like, flashbang, oh. So I don't know why it combusted, but it combusted.
So now we know flashbang under a car is going to end up with a big fire.
100% of the time I've seen a flashbang go off under a car, it resulted in a flame.
Well, is this the one time you've seen it?
Yeah.
Or
it's the only time I've ever seen it. Yeah.
No, we call that a barbecue.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Hang on. Give me 1 second. Hang on. Sorry about this. I hear you.
Okay, good. All right. I was making sure. We'll see what we get. I don't know how far it charged on that, but
yeah. Thank you for the brief pause. And now we got the headphones back on.
Headphones are in. See what happens.
And, okay. So we're learning a lot here. Flashbang under a car will engulf the car in flames.
Immediately.
Yeah. And ramming someone will deploy all your airbags.
All airbags go off.
And the way to escape is to not stop running.
Right. So some of these things I shouldn't say, right? Like I'm telling bad guys, like
the audience is going to be like, no, don't tell them that.
Another cop is going to be watching this like, why is he telling them that? Now all the bad guys will watch. I happen to know that only law-abiding citizens who are wonderful people would listen to your podcast.
Well, this is true. I actually, I want to get what I've been wanting to do, and audience, please make a comment if you please share your opinion on this, what I'm about to say. I want to get like a couple of cops and park rangers to kind of be like recurring characters on the show, who you maybe have some updated stories and because it's all about like survival stories and survival tips and adventures and educating the audience in an entertaining way, So
I think that makes sense. I mean, it's funny because when you talked about this podcast and the title and the nature of it, I'm like, I don't consider myself to be, a survivor or survivalist, but it is true that a lot of the things that I see are like, I see things go the wrong way. And what could have avoided that situation was to do it this way. So survival in a sense, I guess. So yeah, you could get, there's all kinds of people that are, I mean, firefighters go and see when things go really, really badly. You can go, what's the wrong thing to do in a fire? What's the wrong thing? What's the wrong way to put out a fire? We learn from things going the wrong way.
Speaking of fires, we never finished the story. What ended up happening to her Toyota? Did the fire department come put that thing out, or full explosion?
I want to say that fire extinguishers handled it because she got out unscathed, and it was one of those things where like you're planning on the possibility that she's going to grab that rifle and start shooting, even though we don't have any evidence that she's going to do that, but the plan is we don't want to make her able to do that because she's under the influence. what happened with the flashbang going off, which was very loud and scary, and then the fire, it sobered her up real quick. And she's like, why didn't you just knock on the glass? I would have come out. We're like, well, we didn't know if you were going to come out. So
we thought you might be risk. We could not take that risk.
We had to light your car on fire. That is our MO. It's right in the
I wonder if she got a new
now.
Tacoma out of that gig.
Yeah, I don't remember. I don't remember what happened, but I know that we do a lot of damage, and then we say, yeah, file a claim with the city, which isn't a real thing. It's not a thing at all.
They don't make Tacomas like that anymore.
No, I mean, you think about it, like any Toyota pickup is worth at least 25 grand, no matter how many miles are on it.
And this
I tried to buy one. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I actually, Dana, who the audience doesn't know, but our former friend and colleague, always mocked me for not buying the Ford Ranger off of him.
Really?
But yeah, he does that to people, mocking you for not taking the deal. But he wanted way more than I wanted to pay at the time. But then again, this was pre-2020, so
right.
I would be probably a millionaire if I had bought that truck.
It is interesting. I don't know how much we want to talk about Dana, but he is an impressive person in so many ways. And I remember like his confidence in the way he speaks and the way that he messes with people. I was like so flattered that he like kind of left me alone and was just kind of nice to me. I was like, wow, he must really see something in me, because he really didn't fuck with me that much.
See, I'm like, I got the best end of the deal because I used the truck for a year for free and then didn't buy it.
I don't have to buy it. I will just borrow it indefinitely.
Exactly.
Oh man.
The Ford Ranger though, man, that was a great truck. It was like a 01 Ranger.
Yeah.
I get nostalgic for those like little smallish trucks, like the old Tacomas and the old Ranger.
Yep. Yeah, that was my first car. Was like an old Nissan pickup, and like a 1988 Nissan pickup single cab. And God help me, I'm like, I get on Auto Trader, see if I can find one for like $5 grand. I could drive it around for old time's sake.
Yeah.
That's why I'll never be rich. I want to spend $5 grand on a truck I don't need.
Yeah. So. Get yourself a Datsun.
Yeah, get a Datsun.
Yeah.
If you want to be Canadian, it's Datsun.
Oh, okay. All right. I am saying A more, so.
I know. So I'm trying to add your repertoire.
Thank you.
Yeah, your French Canadianness.
Yeah. So we got flashbangs, we got OC spray, we got tasers. I don't know. Anything else? We talked about crashing the boat.
Crash the boat.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah. Are we only talking about me, or do you want to talk about you?
No, I mean the Tesla story was about me, and
sure.
The boat was half about me.
So I think let's you may have to edit all this out, but I still think that your experiences in your career since the first day I met you until today, I think that there's a very interesting series in that, and I think you should write it. I really do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. You remember we worked. Our team was on the island of Nantucket, and you and I had our own rented house, so we could be available to assist the boss, but still, he could have his own privacy. And we sat out on the deck and we talked about writing this thing. And I was like, you have to write the screen. Like, you at least have to write a treatment about it, because like these things you're asking me about law enforcement, like any cop that listens to this is going to go, I know all this. Maybe not all the negotiator stuff, but it's commonplace. The stuff that's commonplace to you and me, like, I think is interesting to people, and they can, again, comment down below if they agree. But the way that famous people, the way they have to interact with the world, and the people they need around them to make those interactions and make their career safe and successful, it's interesting, I think, because, and the only reason I think that is because I will tell what I think is an interesting story, and then people will go to the minutia details of it, and I'm like, oh, you find that it like, wait, what does a publicist do versus what does this person do? And you're like, well, this is kind of how it works. So I do think that there's enough interesting stories there. Like, nobody thinks as a security guy that I would be learning to drive a boat. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I always liked when people thought I was a security guy too.
Yeah.
Like we would go do a recce, a little reconnaissance, and I would just roll with you because I got to be in on the plan.
Yeah.
I'll just be all jacked and strapping. And, And then people thought that I was like, in on the security team too, which I kind of was, but
Yeah.
without any formal training, like you in the boat.
Exactly. I am to piloting a boat as you are to security work. But in that you did it with no training, but did it to some level of success. Well, I tell people
The
will
boss
talk about
lived.
hey, ain't nobody died on our watch.
Yeah.
Nobody died of jellyfish stings.
Yeah.
But
Can't say so much for after we left the team.
Right. There were some unfortunate mishaps.
There were some casualties.
There were some career casualties after we left. Yeah, I think that like when people ask me about security and they in their head they're thinking of like bodyguard. Like I stand next to the client and I push people out of the way. But at the end of the day, it's logistics, right? So it's what's the schedule? What do they need to do? What do they need? How do we get it? How do we make sure that? So in a manner of speaking, our jobs were almost exactly the same. Like I went and got him coffee. I went and got clients coffee. I went and got newspapers. I washed cars. I did all of that stuff because it's what needed to be done. Just like you would be there and be a barrier in between the client and the public. And that's what security is. It's creating that space in between the person, the principal or the client and the rest of the world. And how do they want to mitigate that space? Because everybody is different. I've had clients that are like, oh man, we don't need to go in a side door. I'll walk in the front door. And I'm like, oh my God, like then everybody will see you. And they're like, I don't care. I mean, that's like Jerry Seinfeld is really big on that. Jerry Seinfeld will sit in did you ever watch comedians in cars getting coffee?
A little bit, not really.
So it's actually pretty interesting from a comedy standpoint because he talks about the nuts and bolts. I love Jerry Seinfeld. I love him so
I think
much.
he's hysterical. He's really, really super talented. We saw him
when
live
we got
before.
to meet him.
Yeah.
We saw him live and we met him. And there was a few things that happened in my security career that I really held on to personally. And that was one of them. But one of the things he does is he's sitting in a coffee shop and somebody's trying to take a video. And the person he's with, who's also famous, is going like, oh, that guy's trying to take a picture. And he goes, so? Like, who cares? And he's like, but they're filming us. And he's like, it doesn't matter. Like, okay, they have a picture of me eating. Who cares? So, and how powerful, right? Like how freeing to just go, I was going to
say that's gotta be such like a diffusing, comfortable way to live, to just be like, yeah, whatever. That's like some like stoic level shit right there.
It very much is. It's like in the Matrix when he goes, there is no spoon. He's like, you're trying to bend the spoon. That's impossible. The secret is there is no spoon. And it's like, oh my God, like it just opens up. So I can't even remember the other celebrity or actor or comedian that he was with, but whoever it was, you could see in real time, like they were just like, oh, like it was totally disarming to them. Like, wait, I've never even considered it from that angle, which was so simple. Because there's really only two reactions to have. I care or I don't care. And some people care and some clients don't. And so I've had clients that tell me like, stand right next to me. Like I've had female clients that are like, do not leave my side. And I have other clients that are like, you can wait in the car. I don't need you. So, but that's what you do as a part of a team for a known person. We all have different responsibilities, but we all have the same job. And that job is to mitigate the space between the principal and the rest of the world. And how do they want to interact? And as you well know, because we experienced it, sometimes that interaction is, I don't want anybody to see me. No, I'm here. Think about me. I want none of it. And then that same client can also go, hey, let's go out and get a bunch of attention. Yeah. I want everybody to know I'm here. and sometimes it's publicity and sometimes it's not, but so it's in flux all the time too. So that's, if we're talking about security now, that's it. It's not being the biggest, toughest guy in the room and punching people, because I've never had to punch anybody in security, but it's mitigating the space. So
I do wish that we could have used at least one flashbang though.
I'm not just saying this because we keep talking about flashbangs. I have had that. It's almost a fantasy when I'm like, I have a client in a hotel and I'm trying to get to their car, and the space between the door, and you've been there with me, the space between the door and the car is like 40 feet. But there's a mess out there, and then you're going to get trapped in it. They're going to surround you and everybody's taking photos. I wish you would have known about flashbangs at that point, because I would have loved to gone, Mr. President, are you ready? Okay, fire in the hole and just throw it out. Boom! And then while everybody's on the ground, just walk casually to the car.
I feel like maybe you did tell me the flaming car story once along. I feel like I've always
Now it's coming back.
It's deja vu. I've always wanted to know about flashbangs.
Yes, you are very stuck on the flashbangs, but I get it. There's so many different types, and it's visual and audio. It's disorientating. It's great.
And I
Flashbangs are
work
amazing.
I do work in Hollywood, so we got to do the callback for comedic reasons, you know.
Yes, yeah, that's good. I'm learning something. The callback. Okay,
Yeah,
good.
I would have even loved to have just like woke the boss up for work one day with one. That
So,
that would have been. Got your
so
coffee here, boss.
I
Boom!
have. So that reminds me of God. How do I tell this story? So somebody that we know who was dead asleep, and somebody else in their life who's the only person that could have done this to them and got away from it, kept waking them up. We were on a boat, and the principal was asleep, totally reasonably. It was like midnight. Fell asleep on the ground with a blanket, and this other person would be like, let's say this person's name was Susan, like, "Hey, Susan!" And they would wake up like, and they're like, "Oh, you asshole!" And the person would fall asleep, and the person would do it again, and I was in hysterics. And that, I guess, is the human version of a flashbang.
Yeah, yeah. We're lucky
There's your
Susan didn't have
callback.
a heart attack.
I even said that. I even said to the subject who kept doing this, as like trying to breathe because I was laughing so hard. I'm like, "You got to stop! Like, dude, you got to stop."
You're
It
like,
was
dude, are
hilarious.
you in the will or something? Like, what's going on here?
Are you are you in charge? Are you the vice president? And if you kill the president, you
Do
get
you
promoted.
manage? Are you the estate manager? Like, what is the estate left to you? What's going on here?
There was definitely, I was like, "You're going to kill him. Like, you have to stop doing that." But I remember thinking that is the only person that could do that without consequence.
Yeah, yeah. I would have liked to flashbang Susan one time.
It's jarring. I can tell you that. So I have been the subject of a flashbang, and
Oh,
it was
you have been flashbanged.
I got flat, not in the academy though. This was when I was a role player for a scenario for the Anaheim SWAT team. And they're telling me like there was a guy that I knew, and he knew I had prior experience as a negotiator, so he wanted me to be the bad guy on the phone because he wanted me to make the new negotiator work really hard. And it's fake, obviously. So they gave me a whole scenario. You've got hostages, and you're an employee that's disgruntled. You got fired. You came back, and you fired a gun into the air, and now you've got 5 hostages. Okay. So I'm talking to the guy on the phone, and then the proctor comes in and goes, "Hey, so on this next one, I want you to shoot the gun." I'm like, "Well, if I do that, they're going to breach, right? Like the SWAT team's coming in." And he goes, "Yes. That's why I'm warning you. So as soon as you shoot the gun," and we're in a shed. We're in a shed that's, 200 square feet. He's like, "When you do it, go to the corner because they're going to use a flashbang." And I went, "An inert flashbang, like one that doesn't, like they're just going to throw like an empty one in to simulate a flashbang." "No, they're going to throw a flashbang." And I'm like, "I don't know. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be in here." And so I will be honest. Okay, you can't take me alive, coppers. And I fired the gun, the blank went off, and I ran to the corner and hid like it was end of days, like a nuclear bomb was coming. And I closed my eyes and I covered my ears, and it was still pretty bad. I can't even imagine what it feels like if your eyes are open and you're not covering your ears. Like it's like you can feel the concussion of it. Like
I was gonna say it probably can easily cause a concussion of the brain, eh?
it definitely hits you. I know that they expect them to go off in small spaces with people, but like if they know people are in the bedroom, they'll throw a flashbang in the living room. Like they don't want to flashbang the room that they're in because it can catch things on fire. There's a lot of risk, but the impact that they have, like it's phosphorus exploding. So when it goes off, like you're blind, can't see anything. So it's very easy to then safely enter and take somebody into custody. But
After you did this scenario where you had to be flashbanged, were the guys who were running they were doing the practice, were they like hyping
Mhm.
you up like, fuck yeah, man, you're the first person I
No.
know to get flashbanged. You're the
No.
shit.
So quite the opposite. It was, I went to one of the sergeants of the SWAT team who I knew personally because he was on patrol with me. And I was like, I can't believe you guys did that, but I took it. And I thought I was going to get what you just described. Like,
Yeah.
you are very manly.
You're the
Tough.
man. I've
We
never
are
seen
so
someone take a
impressed.
flashbang like that.
I got the opposite. I got, what's the big deal? We've all had it happen. What's the big deal? And I'm like, what's the first time it's happened to me? I was scared. So I'm past the point where I try to pretend to be tough. I think it's almost funnier to act like you're not tough.
I would have been like, hang on, wait, you're telling me you've all been flashbanged?
Everybody got flashbanged. Everybody got banged in here.
What
Yeah, I think
what
they're
department
lying.
is this? Because I'm not applying over there.
No, don't apply there. Yeah, don't.
Yeah.
No, I don't know what the hell they're talking about. A bunch of liars. I
How
guess
long?
if you're on,
How long ago did you get flashbanged?
oh, this is like 2 years ago.
Oh man.
Well, honestly, one of the things I think is like, I'm in my 40s. Like, I don't want, like, I can't afford to lose any more of my hearing. Like,
Yeah.
I'm still at a point where I'm like, ooh, I could really get hurt doing that. When I was in my 20s, I'd be like, I'll be fine. Now I'm like, ooh, now I'm like putting on sunblock like every day. Like, don't want to get skin cancer.
You should have had some for that flashbang.
Dude, if I don't SPF 1000, I needed something because it was bright and loud. I did not like it, and I was like,
How-
I was hiding in the corner. And that was the end
Oh
of
my God. Well, speaking of scenarios, my friend,
Yes,
are you ready for your hypothetical survival scenario?
I am ready. I'm fearful that this is something that I should answer correctly. I was hoping it was going to be like lost in the desert, and I'd be like, Jeff, I don't know anything about this, and then it was no big deal if I got it wrong. So I'm gonna do my best. I'm gonna answer honestly.
You know, I think that would have been actually more fun. What I got to start doing is when I have someone who's an expert in something, give them something totally different. Maybe that's
It
the
would
hook.
be interesting. It would be interesting. I'll tell you, I'm going to try harder on this because it'll be more embarrassing if I'm wrong or if I'm like, just like what I say makes no sense whatsoever.
Well,
But I'm going to give it my all.
Either way, if you get the question wrong, feel free to push back on me and, give a
Okay.
little explanation about why you would have done B rather than A or vice versa.
Okay.
And I
Okay.
also like to tell guests if I give you an A or a B and you're like, well, really, I would do C. That's okay too. We'll give you a little leeway, but not for every question, but
I'm going to try to stay on track as best I'm going to try to choose the best of the two you give me, and then maybe what I might have done differently. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll try to
for the audience playing along at home, if you listened to the interview so far, then you are ahead of the game. So a little hint.
Wonderful.
All right. So here we go.
I'm ready.
Here is your scenario. You are a seasoned SWAT team negotiator called to defuse a tense hostage situation in a suburban neighborhood. A man has taken 2 hostages in their home and tied them up, barricading himself inside. First question, do you A, gather intel on the hostage taker and hostages to better understand their backgrounds and motivations? Or B, immediately establish communication with the hostage taker to assess the situation and begin negotiations?
This is a really well worded scenario. I'm
Thank you.
already impressed, Jeff.
I fancy myself a writer.
You've clearly done your homework and your research, and I'm very proud.
Thank you.
I would absolutely A. I would intel is always first. The only time I'm going to skip intel and go to an immediate entry is when we have no choice and there is a risk of great bodily injury or death right now, and we have very convincing evidence of that. Otherwise, we want to know what we're getting involved in before we make entries. A.
Fantastic. A is correct.
Yes. Let's end it right there.
You're doing so far so good. So far you're at 100%.
Fantastic.
So you choose to gather intel on the hostage taker and hostages, analyzing their backgrounds, relationships, and potential triggers. Armed with this information, you are better prepared to approach the negotiation strategically. Next question. Do you A, control information by tracking down the girlfriend of the hostage taker and having law enforcement confiscate her cell phone to prevent communication? Or B, focus solely on establishing rapport with the hostage taker without considering external factors?
So again, you need to control the information that that person receives. So it's something that gets overlooked, and from a civilian perspective, it makes sense. And we've talked about this earlier of like, oh, if he wants to talk to the wife, just let him talk to the ex or whatever it is. I don't want the hostage taker to know what I know unless it is advantageous to me, and I don't want him to know what I don't know unless it's advantageous to me. So and I may not have much information, so it's all very, very valuable. So I would absolutely quarantine that female because I need to have direct communication with her. I don't want her calling in and talking to him and saying something that is contrary to what I've told her, if I have to bluff or I have to ruse. And I also don't know that maybe she doesn't like her parents. Maybe she doesn't like the hostages that have been taken. Maybe she's on drugs. Maybe she's mentally ill. There's all these things I don't know. So I want to control the communication with the hostage taker, and I don't want outside sources to be able to interfere until I'm ready for that. A.
Fantastic. A is correct.
Yes.
You are on a roll, sir.
Yes.
So, recognizing the importance of controlling information flow, you coordinate with law enforcement and track down the girlfriend of the hostage taker and secure her phone. By limiting his ability to communicate, you gain a tactical advantage in the negotiation process. Next, do you A, utilize psychological tactics during negotiations, such as appealing to the hostage taker's empathy and rationality to encourage him to surrender peacefully, or B, resort to aggressive tactics to pressure the hostage taker into compliance, disregarding the potential escalation of the situation?
Really, really good question. So, yeah. So there
Thank you.
are scenarios where I'm so impressed. I'm always impressed with you, but this is really well done.
Thank you, sir.
So there are scenarios where B would be the right answer, where time is of the essence, where you just don't have time for anything else. Like you're going to get one shot at this, and it's going to be the window is closing rapidly. It's almost never the right thing to do, though. For the most part, you want to start to use psychological tactics, absolutely. Based on what you know about this person, what can I do to gain their willful compliance? Sometimes being fair and calm with people makes them angry, but being aggressive very rarely backs people down. Now, if I know that this person they're very timid, I might try getting the upper hand, and that has been used before, but the answer in this scenario would be A. Use what you know and use psychology to try to de-escalate, de-emphasize, disassociate, all those things.
Fantastic. A is correct.
Yes.
You employ psychological tactics during negotiations using empathy and rationality to build rapport with the hostage taker and de-escalate the situation. By appealing to his humanity, you aim to cultivate trust and cooperation, increasing the likelihood of a peaceful resolution. Next question. Do you A, maintain a detached and formal demeanor, refraining from personalizing the interaction with the hostage taker, or B, address the hostage taker with the real names of the hostages to humanize them and emphasize their vulnerability?
So, in this type of a scenario, and again, a lot of it is what you collect from this person. If they are upset with the hostages, these are people they're very angry about. Humanizing them isn't going to help. You're probably dealing with a narcissist, and you got to make it all about them. In a situation like this, where you know that his motivation is control and to gain access or authority over somebody else, I do think that B is the better answer to say, these are real people, these are older people, whatever it is that you can do to, make the consequence real for them, because then maybe they're less likely. Sometimes they just get caught up in it. And you're like, hey, this is a real person. You want to use their name. So I would go with B in that scenario.
Fantastic. B, you address the hostage taker using the real names of the hostages, humanizing them, and fostering empathy. By acknowledging their individuality, you aim to evoke a sense of responsibility and accountability in the hostage taker, increasing the
Absolutely.
chances of a positive outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Next, do you A, continue to rely solely on persuasion and negotiation tactics, avoiding direct confrontation or ultimatums, or B, transition from asking to telling the hostage taker what to do when negotiations stall, asserting control and setting clear boundaries?
I think that in this particular situation, so you have to know when you're not, you have to know when something's not working. So you talk about experience in this particular thing. I mean, I guess it's in anything. If you're a director, you have to know when, like, okay, the scene isn't working. I have to change something. That is the hallmark of a very good seasoned negotiator, is that they know that the tactic that I'm employing is not working. I need to shift, or I just need to work harder at it. I need to go a different angle. In a situation like this where time is so critical, I think that I would go with B and start to make the reality of the situation more real. This is, if these people die, that's very different than just punching somebody. Like kidnapping somebody, tying somebody to a chair and punching them is different than them dying. If they die, the consequences are going to get worse for you. If you want a chance that you say you want to talk to your wife so that you can talk to your kid, you need to be there for your kid. And you're going to be doing the rest of your life in Pelican Bay if one of these people dies. So let's start making some, because I don't want him to feel in control of the situation. I want him to know that there are boundaries and consequences. So I would go with B at this point.
Fantastic. B, as negotiations stall, you transition from asking to telling the hostage taker what to do, asserting authority and setting clear boundaries. By establishing firm directives, you aim to regain control of the situation and compel compliance from the hostage taker. Next, do you A, explore potential compromises and concessions to facilitate a peaceful resolution, identifying mutually beneficial outcomes for both parties, or B, maintain a rigid stance and refuse to negotiate, escalating tension and increasing the likelihood of violence?
So A. So I would, I'm going to make him eliminate options. So I'm going to keep trying to problem solve as long as that tactic is as long as I have time to do it. I'm going to figure out the why. Why have you done what you've done? Is it, do you want to talk to your wife, or you want to have influence over your child? You worry that she's going to marry somebody else and that person's going to raise your kid? If I can get to the why, then I can start looking for a compromise. One of the things that I think is really important is to try to figure out how can they get away with this thinking that they won? Because that's the best. I had a training officer a long time ago that said the best arrest that you're going to make is the one where you arrest somebody and they think it's a good idea that they go to jail and they thank you. So I would absolutely start looking for mutual, I would start looking for concessions on his part, not giving any on my part. I'm not going to give up anything that's valuable to me, but I will tell him, okay, if you want to talk to your wife, if that's what this is about, then why don't you come out here, and you can sit and talk to her before you go to jail. Like, you got to go to jail. Like, there's no way this doesn't end with you going to jail, but you're going to be out. You'll be able to bail out. What if I promise you that you have that phone as soon as you're done? What if I, sometimes concessions are small, like, hey, the cops are too close, back them up a little bit. Okay, so if you release a hostage, I'll turn off some of the lights, or I'll do that. So you do look for compromises, because if you, it's great, because every inch I take, I'm never giving it back. Whether it's a physical inch or a mental inch, I'm never giving it back. The other thing that's really good is if he says no, then you don't have any hooks in this person. If you are coming up with all these other solutions and it's no, it's my way or the highway, you have to change your tactic. And that's when things might need to get a little more pointed. Like, hey, I'm giving ideas and you're not willing to bend. So how is this supposed to end? You know what I mean? Like starting to make the reality of their situation more real.
Mhm.
So was that B? Which one was the give concessions, not rigid. The other one.
That was A. That was A.
I choose A.
You got it. You got it. All right. 2 more questions. And so far you are at 100%. So you explore.
Haven't lost my touch.
Yeah, exactly. You got it. You could go back right into SWAT work.
Let's go. Plug me
Right back
back
in. Maybe you get to flashbang someone.
maybe I get flashbang. Maybe I flashbang somebody else. Mutual flashbang.
You could blow up a car with a flashbang.
Maybe I light a car on fire. I'm close to retirement. Who cares?
Yeah, you're close. So fantastic. You explore potential compromises and concessions, seeking common ground and mutually beneficial outcomes. By demonstrating flexibility and willingness to accommodate the hostage taker's demand, you foster goodwill and pave the way for a peaceful resolution. Second to last question. You got 2 more left. Next, do you A, employ psychological tactics to undermine the hostage taker's confidence and manipulate his emotions, exploiting his vulnerabilities to facilitate surrender, or B, maintain a respectful and professional demeanor, refraining from provocative or antagonistic behavior?
Again, a lot of these are like what I think is working and what I don't think is working. I do think there comes a point, and since this is near the end of the scenario, when you're trying compromise, when you're trying de-escalation, you tried all these things and they aren't working. I think there does come a time where you need to make them start to doubt themselves. And I would say, rather than just keeping it light and professional, in a situation like this, I don't have as much time to play this out for hours. So I will probably need to start making him doubt that this has gone the way that he thought it was going to go. Because of course, they've all got some plan, right? I'm going to come in here, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to get what I want. When I start showing them tangible proof, this did not go, you didn't plan this well, and therefore it is not going to end the way you want it to end. And I'll give you an example is, there are times where people are jumpers on a bridge, and I will tell them, what is your goal? Well, I don't want to live anymore. So you're going to jump off of here and kill yourself. Yes. What if you don't die? Like, look at this distance. If you're going to get horribly injured, this is not going to kill you. So if that's what you want to do, that's a story for another day. But today, you jump off this overpass and you're just going to be hideously in pain for a long, long time. And that's not what you want. So you have to start undercutting their plan. So I would say A, at this point, I'm going to start trying to chip away this confidence that he's in control and that this is going to go the way he wants it to go.
Fantastic. See, you took the hint that we were close to the end, and so you got that one right. You have to pick up on the context clues that are not necessarily in the lines, but in between the lines.
I'm getting the context and the color.
Exactly. So there's a lot going on here. There's a lot going on, and you're not missing a thing. So congratulations to you. You are close to surviving the pod. So, as you should be. Last question.
Here we go.
Do you A, leverage the hostage taker's ego and provoke him to face you at the window, challenging his masculinity and daring him to face you, or B, maintain a patient and empathetic approach, prioritizing the safety and well-being of the hostages above all else?
So if I think I have time, it would be B, if I think I have time. That is going to be based on information that we have. And if all we have is a little bit of information, that's all of our information. And so we can't say, well, yeah, but we don't know. We can't worry about what we don't know. We have to say, all we do know is this. So when you have somebody that is, and as this scenario has gone, very rigid, not giving up any concessions, there's not any mobility in what they're doing. And we've thus far been unsuccessful at getting this person to do anything we want them to do. I always want to try and continue to use empathy and de-escalation to see if I can end it without violence. That's That's best for everybody, because even if you decide you're going to shoot somebody, you could miss. So, but in this type of a scenario where nothing has worked and you have people that are definitely injured and we don't know the extent of that injury and time might be expired, there does come a time in in some of these scenarios, in a fraction of these scenarios, where the only true tactic that's left is to try to move them into position to end it with lethal force. So in this scenario, I would go with A and try to move him, use what I know, which is he's egotistical, and try to get him to challenge me, to come out, to prove himself right, and put him in a position where we can use lethal force.
A. Amazing. A. You appeal to the hostage taker's ego and provoke him to face you like a man at the window, challenging his masculinity and daring him to face you. By appealing to his pride and ego, you goad him into exposing himself, setting the stage for decisive intervention, aka plink plink. Congratulations. Your strategic negotiation tactics and psychological finesse have successfully resolved the hostage situation, ensuring the safety of the hostages and neutralizing the threat posed by the hostage taker. You have survived this podcast.
Oh yeah, I was worried that I was going to look really dumb in this scenario. So this is, I'm sure somebody's going to watch this and go, no, he's all wrong, but they're wrong. I'm right.
If anyone watches, put it in the comments.
If I screwed it up,
if you think it's wrong, comment below.
And
drop
back
us
it
a
up. Don't
comment.
just say he's wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Smash that like button.
Yeah, smash that like button, subscribe, comment, 5-star review, all that good shit. It all helps.
More stories coming. More stories coming.
Yeah, more stories coming. And yeah, man, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. It's always good to talk to you.
Yeah, and we will have to catch up later. And thanks again, and bye, everyone.